asked a great question about what are you guys seeing with your return on ad spend for events? And so I decided to put together this, ideally a valuable presentation of some of the things that we're seeing. You know, we've worked with hundreds of clients in all kinds of industries on this sort of stuff. And so I put this together, and ideally this is going to be valuable for you, give you maybe some distinctions, and also how to actually look at building profitable event models using paid advertising. So this is all about adding double-digit growth with education-based events and paid media. So going beyond, things like just joint ventures, strategic partnerships, and more. That can be like gasoline on a fire done correctly. So first thing, just to give a little history for those of you who are not familiar with my world and doing this, I've been at this for over 30 years. I ran my first education-based event model with teleseminars all the way back in 1994. We were doing about 2 of these a day in volume. And I ultimately took that model and automated it, hijacking a bunch of different tech to actually set it up on a robotic system. We ran it every Thursday starting in 2002. And I used a radio show on NBC to fill into those events, and also some other paid media methods. We ran radio infomercials, and then ultimately drove to this teleseminar that was robotic, that enrolled people in our coaching program. That ultimately led to us growing a pretty substantial business off the shoulders of that. We also took this model on top of what we were doing, with that model. We then said, okay, what can we do to scale this even more? Because we were really good at creating and producing leads. So hiring, attracting sales people who can convert, sales for, premium services and products is not always the easiest things, but lots of customer service people love people, but they can't enroll very well. So we figured, what can we do to bridge the gap? So what did we do? We took customer service people and turned them into high performers in our model. And the way we did that is and it also created a very personalized experience. So it wasn't fully automated, but it was a hybrid automated model that still has applications today. So here's what we did. We took a customer service person, we trained them on how to build rapport, which they love to do anyway. They love to get into conversations. They love people. They would set the stage for our presentation. And we had audio tapes at this time, well, at least when we started it. We had audio tapes that we'd push play on. And it was the presentation. It was about 13 minutes. It was basically a webinar, a teleseminar on an audio, but it was live with a physical person also assisting. And then at the end of it, it had all the pricing and all the things and all the benefits that go with it. And then at the end, now an enrollment specialist, our person who was good at selling premium services and getting those sales, would come on and go, hey, that was amazing, wasn't it, Danny? Can you see how this could work for you? And then they'd either handle objections if there were any, or walk them into getting started. And at our peak, we were doing 300 plus of those presentations every single day before I sold that business. So there's so many changes today. We've got inflation. It's costing more money to run media. Leads are costing more. Benchmarks for webinars, we're seeing, anywhere from about $15 all the way up to $35 per registration. And then, of course, you have a lot of people who don't show up. And how do you squeeze the lemon to make it valuable in your business model so that it can actually work? And so there's some nuances and distinctions that we found in a lot of these changes going on in this model. So the problem, though, with most education-based events, webinars, challenges, et cetera, is it can sometimes come across very transactional. It's become very commoditized, webinars and things like it. And a lot of people that we talk to, maybe like you talk to, would go, I got a lot of effort into this and not like the best results, right? So it's high effort with low results. That's not a good model. We want the opposite, right? Low effort and high results. So I want to talk about some of that. Also, a big problem, most people treat their event, challenge, 3-day workshop, webinar, et cetera, more like a main event or a Super Bowl instead of looking at it as part of a series of events. And that's a really critical thing. And I'll get more into that as we go through some of these examples. So I want to share with you 3 or 4 unique client models that will hopefully open up some doors and also real data. I won't mention clients' names. When we work with clients, we do NDAs with our clients, but these are all very relevant in the last 12 to 18 months that we're working with currently as well. And I want to introduce you to a strategy, a way to be thinking about the events that 100% of the time is adding 700 to 800% greater results and doing the opposite of what most people do with education-based events. Keep in mind, in the way we do it, we look at the event is one piece to trigger several events. It's more like a campfire process versus like if you take this match here, right? I got a little matchstick to keep these little props on my desk. So if we take this matchstick and we light it and there's a fireplace over there, throw it in, that's kind of like an event model. Like you run your 3-day challenge or workshop, whatever it might be, or a webinar, any of this fits, and let's see what we get. And we run a replay probably for a couple of days, have follow-up for 3 to 5 days, and then what we get is what we get. Our version is more like we take this match, and what we're going to do is light a piece of paper, get a fire. We're going to put some kindling on it, get that heated up. We're going to put some branches on top of that, get that heated up, and then we're going to put the log on top, and then that log will burn for days and days and days, done correctly. That's what we have, and I'll walk through that here, and hopefully that's valuable. So our model is geared on more of after the event. There's at least a 14, many times upwards of 20 to 21 day process. It's in some cases what you would look at like a reverse launch process, whereas a lot of times launches do a lot of warm up and build up. We also look to do that in reverse. We also do this in bite-sized chunks, because think about it. You probably don't have a lot of time to be attending events or want to put a lot of time into being on or in events or spending 2-3 days or even a couple hours in many cases. So the way we do this, especially on the back end of events, is we are doing this and delivering the experience in bite-sized chunks overall, and using a reverse story process, story-based selling model. So that being the case, what are we looking to do? We're looking to create a unique experience through the follow-up of the process. You know, what's the old saying? The fortune is in the what? The follow-up. So what if you could create a model that was an automated model that could create an amazing experience, whether they bought or they didn't buy, and was proven to also get you 700 to 800% more results? Would you extend the timeline instead of maybe shrinking it, thinking that urgency and scarcity would be the path to maximum results? We have found the longer you do this, the greater results. I'll talk more about that in a second. So experience is deepen. The journey is far deeper. And we can look at it like we're working to Disneyfy. What do I mean by that? Like when you go to a Disney park, you know, you've got Frontierland, you've got Disneyland, you've got Epcot, you've got these different parts of the park, and each one provides a different experience. Yet we're walking to get to those pieces. So this also is like going from place to place to place, and they're very specific strategies that we lay out. So a timeline. I want to walk through just a quick timeline. Oh, by the way, if you have questions on any of this, you want to talk about this for your business model, just reach out to me at dan@breakthrough3x.com. Happy to get into a conversation and how this could apply to your business directly too. So the timeline. First of all, once the event happens, let's call it a webinar, it's called a one-day workshop, or et cetera, and you're going to do some kind of follow-up. So immediately following the webinar, let's say, I'm going to just use webinar, but I'm talking about challenges, workshops, 1 day, 3 day, all of these things apply. Immediately following whatever it is, we're going to focus on the messaging in an email and potentially text also through this process being for the offer, right? So it's building up the excitement around what happened in that event, and then really focused on the offer and the value of that offer, right? It's the story of the event. And we basically look to send that out on day 0, so the night of an event, and then the next day, staying focused on the event, right? Next, we're going to put the replay in play where it makes sense. Now, of course, not always do this on challenges. You don't always do this on full workshops. So we might take highlights or that sort of thing. So instead of encore, it might be highlights instead. Where I've got encore, it would be highlights of the event that you'd feature, which we've done very well with that sort of stuff. And separate, if you do use a replay or an encore, this is where that would play. But the big mistake we see people make with their encore, first of all, is they just focus on beating people up over the replay. That's not the whole idea. So we focus on our messaging in this reverse experience is we focus on the offer and the story related to the offer of clients. Along with it, oh, by the way, we've got the replay available. Don't risk missing it in case you did miss it. And we typically will do this version days 2, 3, and 4. So now it's the third email, fourth email, and fifth email in the sequence. Unique stories tied to the direct offer that was made, and also making light of the fact that we've got this replay. Don't risk missing it in case you did, right? But we stay focused and true to the offer that's being done in this model. Next, we create a video related to FAQ. So you think of your biggest objections you get, your biggest reasons that hold people back or the bottlenecks of why they might not move forward. And now you create a replay video and address those. But along with that, you're focusing on telling 1 to 3 stories in this process in the email and or in the video or both, along with driving to the offer. So now we're looking at doing that, having that video. Oh, by the way, when you have this set up, if you can imagine this, usually what we like to do is we have an order page set up, and then we're replacing the video asset. So the initial order page has no video on it, let's say, right? And it's just to the order page, and that's the first 2 emails in the sequence we described. Then you have the encore. The encore goes on top of the order page, and it's all in one place so they can move forward and get started. After the replay is made available for those sequence of those emails, now we replace the encore with, in this case, the FAQ video goes on top. So what we're doing is authentically creating urgency along the way because we're not leaving it up. Now, if you have people who said, I didn't get a chance to see it, you could put the replay on a separate page if you want, right? But you'd be amazed at how this creates a very natural, authentic process in the move, especially if you put the video assets on top of your order pages as well. So that would be typically for 2 to 3 additional days for this FAQ process, right? Then the next sequence in this story-based model is now a short summary offer video, right? So again, if you look at your order page, right? So that FAQ video comes off, the summary video would go on the top of the order page, and now you're driving to that summary video. The summary video, a good summary video, is going to address a problem that a client's or your clients face. It's going to summarize your offer, and maybe it took 30 minutes or 15 or 20 minutes in whatever education-based event, and this is collapsed down to a summary version. It's like 10 minutes, let's say. But you do package it with problem, what's the solution, now your offer, and then stories, some testimonials built into there as well. And then each of the emails has a little bit of a different angle for pieces of the offer and or separate unique stories that are built in, right? So hopefully this is all, I'm going through this fairly quickly, but ideally you start to see the timeline reversed out and how this, it's really unbundling what was bundled, right? Then we get to another asset piece, which is the damaging confession, right? It could be the truth about or the damaging confession. And, a good rule of thumb here is you would focus on either your hero's journey, like rags to riches kind of version, or the revelation that happened after you struggled, or a client's version of that. And you focus on that and then do a really quick snapshot summary of the offer. And again, support it with stories. And you typically do that for, 2 messages, maybe even up to 3 messages. But we call that, we consider that the damaging confession or the truth about video asset that would go there, and the emails that support it. And then the last part of the sequence, or almost the last part of the sequence, we would call the closing sequence, if you have this. Now, I don't recommend you use false scarcity, false urgency. I mean, that's just a pathway to bad reputation and being overselling and being considered that way. However, as you may know, you can do things like you might have a certain limit of the number of clients you work with in a given time frame, month, week, year, that sort of stuff. And you could use that to create your urgency pieces. But, for simplicity's sake, you might create a video that say, hey, we're closing this down soon. Here's a summary, here's a story, right? And then you have a countdown timer that goes on the page. So you have a video that's alluding to the countdown. You have a countdown timer that gets placed on the page, and that page, again, is the order page. So it's all in one place. They keep coming to the same order page every single time. You're not changing links. It makes it simple. that if someone catches it later, they clicked on one email, but now it's updated, right? So they're being a part of this ongoing story that's being unpacked and unbundled through the process. But you can do the 72-hour version, 48, 24, 12. We've had clients do it 6, 3, 1 hour, and closing right in 10 minutes kind of thing. So I'm sure you've all seen versions of that in your own models too. So the closing sequence, then what do? Next part is close it. We typically look at closing it for 2 to 3 days and then assess, right? If you close it and you've got no momentum, then you keep it closed. If you have a lot of momentum and potential spillover, because what you can do is put up a waiting list page, right? And have it closed for 2 to 3 days. And if you've got overflow, well, then a good strategy we like to recommend, and do it with authenticity, is to say, guess what we've done? We've heard you, we're listening. You have a voice here. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to extend the offer unannounced until now, right? And so now, really critical, what we found in the offer extended messaging is to make sure they know there's like something new financing, new installments, new bonus or bonuses in that offer, or all of them. And you package that over the course of, say, 2 messages or 2 days or so, sometimes 3. So you typically will, we only recommend keeping that offer extended for 2 to 3 days, and then again, close it back down, and then have your waiting list, right? If you have people that are on the list, you want to check in with them, right? Because you may have cancellations, and you may have people who opted in or got and they refunded or backed out. So you can replace them with some of the people that had come in on your waiting list version. So hopefully that gives you a very good overview of this process and how you can extend the journey, extend the experience, extend your content. You may have intellectual property. You keep them in this vacuum. I mean, we've extended this almost to 30 days for some clients. So now they run this once a month. But their clients are in this really cool, deep, rich experience. And again, the higher level people don't need to see a 2 to 3 hour thing, but they'll consume, 2 or 3 of your 5 or 6 clips in this process for even just short bursts, or sometimes even the full 10-minute, 8-minute, 7-minute versions, or 3-minute versions that we've just described to you. And they convert because it's a cool, deep, rich experience. And it's not rushing the close. That's the other thing. I think today's consumer, Gary Halbert used to have this quote. He said, only the hungriest fish jump at the crappiest bait. So what kind of bait will respond to short scarcity messaging? Now, my belief is that's really geared for lower level people. So if we want more affluent clients who pay us more, premium services, that yes, urgency still plays a role. Scary, it's proven. I mean, there's a reason that, a home shopping network works, timers and countdowns, and it's going to close out, but doing it in a way that's still a cool experience. And with with paid traffic, you have to understand is that this model can take what normally can be like a 6-month to a year sales cycle and now collapse it down into a couple of weeks because of the way you're delivering this out. At least this has been our experience. There's a client we're working with right now in the financial industry, and I'll just kind of unpack his business model. All right. So we orchestrated this with him. He has a financial coaching package for his academy. And he had gotten a certain amount of results before he really wanted to rebrand, relaunch. So we did, and we did his webinar. And he did his webinar. And the first 24 hours in the webinar, he had 10 new enrollments in the webinar, 10. And I don't know about you, but if you've ever done webinars where you get a few hundred, and he had 500 people who registered, and he got 10 enrollments. So that isn't terrible, right? If you know the numbers and benchmarks, you probably go, yeah, that's not bad, 10 for a coaching program. He got 10, but we were like, oh, wow. So 10, he was disappointed because he was kind of expecting more like 50. And I was like, hey, dude, guess what? Wait and see what's going to happen in this, in this follow-up process. So we put together and had co-created that follow-up process together with him over the course of some days, 20 days. And every day he averaged about 5 new enrollments a day per email, right? 5 a day. And then we did the closeout. And when it was all said and done, he had 101 people in his coaching program. He got 900% greater enrollments in his coaching with this method than the first 24 hours. And also note, he had 101 people enroll out of 500 who registered, which is really, now we had invited other people. We continue to run traffic because this model warrants that, to allow people to come into the model later, not the entire time, of course. After about four or 5 days, it's time to cut that off. But this number had gone up from 500 people who registered. I believe it was like 700 and change, just over 700, right? But we had about 100. We had 101 registrations who bought his coaching program. So this all by itself can be a game changer, thinking differently about our event model, and leveraging assets and the journey, the experience, and Disneyfying. So hopefully that gives you some insights there. Now let's go through the promise of, I want to introduce you to 3 paid models that we're working with right now and some of the nuances. So example number 1 is a client that we're working with, and this particular client runs paid traffic, and they run to their free challenge, and they have a VIP upgrade, like you probably see a lot of people, that's $47 to upgrade. And then they host their challenge event, right? And then in that challenge event, they have 2 offers that they essentially make. So they initially on the thing make an $18,000 offer. And then a couple of weeks after the fact, after they maximize their value with the client, then they offer a $997 downsell. So I'm going to talk about the downsell first, right? That might be surprising. So they run people through this, 14 to 17 to 20 day thing for the 18,000, and then make the downsell offer. Or if they realize somebody's more just qualified for that downsell, right? If they talk to them, right? Which is part of the process too, is adding the phone, which is a game changer. There's some magical things that happen. So this particular client had 26,000 opt-ins in this example. We used Facebook and YouTube, and the average, depending on, there's all kinds of campaigns that get run. So it averaged between $7 and $12 a subscriber. It was an average of 10 total, right? So in that client case, that was, for that model, it was 260,000 in media for that few weeks to drive into their thing. They had 4% of people upgrade to the VIP at 47, which by the way is a benchmark. We see anywhere from 1 to about 5.5% is, the range as a benchmark. So in this case, they had 1,040 people at 47. So they offset their costs and also generated about $48,000 in revenue from the upgrade, right? They hosted the event. Like I said, I'm going to talk about the downsell first. They had a total of 315 people take advantage of the $997 downsell, right? $314,000 in revenue. And that was of the 26,000. So that's 1.2% bought that program. Their high offer for the, actually, I'm sorry, I mixed up these numbers. It was 25,000 for their program. And I had written on the previous page, 18. So it was 25,000. So they had 45 people enroll in the high offer initially. And that produced $1.1 million in revenue. So now let's look at the whole package. So they had 26,000 opt-ins at a cost of 260,000 for their, if we stopped right there where a lot of people stop their assessment, they go, okay, well, my return on ad spend is negative, which it is like $202,000. That's a little bit too scary, right? Too much for me to warrant. But this particular client, understanding how the front end and the back end plays, they offered their high end offer at 25,000. That generated 1.1 million, and their downsell offer an additional 314,000, right? That produced approximately 1.4 million in change, less the cost. So they netted 1.2 million. Now, this particular client runs this kind of model multiple times a year, 4 or 5 times a year. This doesn't include the long-term value of a client. Their average client stays with them for 2.5 years in the program. So these can be huge momentum builders in the business, right? And, ask yourself, like, what can I do to build either small or big and build into this, right? Because you can start small. And I'll show you an example of a little bit smaller model here in just a second. Actually, 2 smaller models. So hopefully you're getting something from this to see how the front end and the back end are so critical to tie together with this. So let's go to the next example. This next example is in a little more narrower niche. So this one is the $18,000 offer. With this client, we took paid traffic and we drove to the registration page, which is free. There's a VIP upgrade, also of $47. They have their event, which is similar to a challenge, but it's not called a challenge. And then they make their offer for $18,000. That's it. They don't offer necessarily a downsell until much, much later, but we're really calculating on just their main core premium offer, right? So this particular client in the health niche, 3,500 registrations. The average registration price in their niche is $25. So a net cost on that is $87,500 for that month to generate these registrations. They have an upgrade rate of about 3.5%, right, for that $47 offer. So they generated an additional $5,700 in revenue. And 122 people had bought it, engaged more deeply in the experience, right? They also, because this is a tighter niche and because, thousands of people is better than a couple hundred people. And they kind of factored like, what would it take for us to get other people to want to get access to our audience? So one of the things we guided them to do was to get sponsorships. In their case, they happened to get like three or four main sponsors for the event that they would be sharing access to this group and get, special promotion privileges and mailings and some different things that are kind of cool. They got an additional $17,500 for event sponsorships. Virtual. This is all virtual, by the way. So this isn't a physical event. This is a virtual event, having a premium sponsorship opportunity and access, right, to that community, right? Because sometimes when you go bigger, it's much easier to attract people who want to play bigger brands, bigger names, et cetera, who want access. So their offer is an $18,000 offer off the back of an apply now kind of model, right? Apply for this opportunity. In their case, when it was all said and done, out of 3,500 people, they had 60 people enroll in their $18,000 program. That brought them in $1 million in change in revenue, top line revenue. So if we look at this, break it down. We have paid media, 3,500 registrations, 87.5. The event, VIP, they got 122, offset some costs. They got sponsorships at 17.5, right? And then they generated about 1 million in revenue. So look at the overall body of work, right? 5,700 from the VIP upgrade, 17.5 for sponsorships, the offer. So overall that produced 1.1 million in revenue, less the cost to run it, 1 million. This is also a client who runs this model 4 times a year. Their client also has a lifetime value. And that's where lifetime value is valuable and important, is because their lifetime value is about 3.2 years in their case for what they do for that membership. So hopefully you're starting to see some similarities here, front end to back end, right? What are some creative ways that you can get people? Sometimes playing bigger attracts bigger opportunities, right? And you can offset some of your costs for the media with those sponsorships too. So here's another example, example number 3. And this person is in a very narrow niche. So what I'm going to actually show you is a 1-year model, 1 year, full year overall. They're very narrow niche in a certain type of service business. But in 1 year, we ran paid media to primarily free webinars. And during those webinars, we gave people the ability to apply to attend an event at 3 tiers, like a basic, like a gold and a platinum type enrollment, right? And I'll walk through that in a second. And then at his event, when they attended the event, then he would make his main offer. His main offer happens to be a $125,000 program for, on average for 3 years, right? It's a 3-year contract. So let me walk through what happened. So in 1 year, there were 3 events that were done, selling into or creating the application to apply, right? So some people would go, why would you have people apply for a 297 or a 597? Well, you want to have the right people, right? You want to know you're dealing with someone who is able to look to go forward, is growth minded, et cetera, certain qualities, value alignment, more. So we strategically design the apply model, even though these are lower tickets, lower tiers. So in 1 year, this client had a grand total of 7,700 registrations. If you do the math on that, roughly a month, what is that? 800 a month, or no, 700 a month, or 600, between 600 and 700 registrations a month. Their average registration in their niche about $2,100 or $21 per registration for the webinars. And we promoted the event, see if you qualify. The cost for the years in advertising, not the 1 month like the other 2 examples, for the whole year, 12 months, 161,000, right? So what is that? If you look at it, it's about 14 to 15,000 a month on average, right? Not setting any records here as far as volume. So we had about 7,700 registrations for the event. Of the 7,700 registrations in the year, they had about 700 people apply. So that's about 60 a month, right? Over 12 months. Of the 700 who applied, of course, you don't have as many show up. So about 400 showed up. Again, over the course of 12 months, that's, 35 a month-ish, just under 40 a month that showed up for their appointment. So out of the 30 to 40 a month, they enrolled 175 total for this front end event, right? So, on an average, they had about 175 divided by 12, they had about 15 people, 14 to 15 per month enroll for the event, the front end event, 297, 597 and multi-thousand. Their average sale for ended up being about 430. So they had brought in $75,000 in revenue just for that front end event, right? So again, let's break this out. Let's go deeper. 175 people enrolled in the multi-day event, where they would then make their main offer, which is a training program, which is $125,000. It's for a 3-year contract. They had 87 out of 175 enroll, $10.8 million in lifetime value, right? Which is pretty significant. Now, this is a 1-year program. Let me say for each of these, you probably will never do this sort of numbers, this type of momentum, et cetera. I want to use that disclaimer so that in case someone gets to this or sees this, that might be outside of our circle here and outside of Danny and our community, that, somebody isn't like saying that we're promising any of this sort of stuff at all. So in his case, let's break it out. 1-year model, driving to the free model is 161,000 in advertising. It brought in 75,000 for that front end event model. Back end brought in 10.8 million in revenue, right? So the question to ask is, how often would we want to do this, right? And the key with this is to look at, as you may pick up in what we're describing and talking about, is you want to factor the front end, you kind of look at this as a circle, the back end, and factor the long-term value. And then factor, okay, when we look at the front end, the back end, and the long-term value, what does it cost to acquire a client with the paid media, right? And then not just cost per registration, but cost per client, cost per buyer, and then cost per acquisition for whatever your main offer or offers would be, right? Which then gives us the ability to tune in to what? To the return on ad spend, right? Each of these are multiples of the ad spend, right? Minimum of, I believe, 5 to 1. To 7 to 1, it's not uncommon when we work with someone with this type of depth in their model. And many of you may have this. You probably have a front end, you probably have a back end, you probably are very tuned in with your long-term value. So it's where this can start to get highly scalable using paid media, right? The other thing to consider is looking at your business. You've got your main core offer. Call that your premium program. It could be your coaching, your training, your hybrid of that, your done for you, whatever that is. Right? And then 2 parts. What feeds into that? It's not just one mechanism, like a webinar or a challenge. It's a series of things. So you start thinking of this in terms of spokes. Each of them are going to have different factors that work. And also there's pros and cons of each. So you might have a webinar, you might have a challenge, you might have a masterclass, you might have an evergreen, and the list goes on, right? Each of them has their own cost to acquire that lead. Each of them pre-positions, pre-qualifies, pre-motivates. So there's the spokes into your core offer or the links in the chain to your core offer that also have to be factored. Then in addition is, once you have your core offer, what about what's going out? In other words, what other opportunities are there? Media is a huge opportunity. Sponsorships are a huge opportunity, especially as you start doing this to scale and give people access to your ideal client. So I hope that serves you. We've covered a model that we've been using, which extends the experience, the journey, Disneyfies the experience in our mind with the way we reverse the asset delivery and the fulfillment through the process, and also allows the higher level people to engage and enjoy the process and not try to shrink the sales cycle to, create false scarcity or urgency. Do it authentically. We talked about some examples, 3 examples of how to use paid media and the front end to back end to long-term value relationship to get your return on ad spend. And if you have any questions and we can help you with this, and sorry, my writing is a little bit sloppy for this, but you can send me a message at dan@breakthrough3x.com and we can have a follow-up and see what we can do to help streamline this for you. All right, that's it for now. Make it a great day. And go be great today. Go make an impact. Go make it.
Thanks for listening to this episode of growthtofreedom.com. Are you struggling to get a steady flow of new clients every day? Or maybe hit a plateau or hit a wall in growing your business? Well, let's help you solve this problem today. Let's review your business and have a conversation. You can do that for free today at breakthroughstrategycall.com. That's breakthroughstrategycall.com. In addition, if you're looking for a simple way to implement some of what we've been talking about in today's episode, then I want to encourage you to get our free small business toolkit. You can get that at activate.breakthrough3x.com. That's activate.breakthrough3x.com. If you'd like access to the special resources and all the show notes for this special episode, make sure to visit growthtofreedom.com.
Hey, it's Dan Kuschell. Click the buttons over here on the left. You can watch these other couple videos, as well as make sure to hit the subscribe button so you can get access to the latest insights, strategies, and wisdom, giving you more clarity, confidence, and direction for exponential business growth. Hit the button now.